guys? So today we got part 2 of my last video. This is going to be Matchmaking UFC Prospects part 2, and we've got 7 new prospects for you guys. This is going to be a list of some of the best young prospects and matching them up against guys that are going to be good fights for them, guys that are going to test them where they need to be tested, fights that are going to be fun stylistically, and fights that are going to get them towards the top if they can indeed prove to be top level guys. So let's start with Felipe Lima. This is one of my favorite young prospects in the UFC. He's only 25, 26, extremely skilled, and you need that at featherweight. He made his debut against Muhammad Naimov, which is an incredibly tough debut. Looked amazing, subbed him. Recently fought again on the Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley card, and he defeated Miles Johns. Uh, didn't look quite as easy for him, but Miles Johns is no joke. Um, and Felipe Lima still looked good. He looked skilled. He got that fight done relatively clearly, which is good for a young prospect coming up. Again, this guy's only 25, 26. He has 5 to 10 more years at the top of the game. This is a guy that's going to learn a lot more going forward, and I think he's ready for a jump up. Um, Obviously, not like a top 10 guy, maybe not even a top 15 guy. I think he needs one or maybe two more wins outside the rankings still, but I'm going to give him Joe Anderson Brito, another Brazilian guy, 20 guy who's 29, I believe, so another relatively young guy, and another guy that has a lot of hype, not as much now because he is coming off a loss to William Gomes, who's another good prospect. But both of these guys are extremely skilled, athletic, good strikers, good grapplers. Whoever wins this fight is going to have a lot of hype going forward in the UFC featherweight division. So, regardless of winner or loser, the outcome of this fight is going to be that one of these guys is even more respected than before, and this is 100% guaranteed to be a fun, high-level fight. I think the winner of this fight deserves a shot at the rankings, especially if they're able to get it done pretty clearly, if they're able to look impressive in this fight. And I think Lima is ready for this type of fight, right? I think his best win right now is still Muhammad Naimov, especially the way in which he got it done. He looked great in the striking, and he was able to get the finish with a sub. I think Felipe Lima is at that level where we can give him the best guys outside the rankings, and he's going to be able to prove himself already at this young age that he is ready to face the UFC featherweight top 15, which is arguably the most solid top 15 in the UFC, right? You got guys at the bottom of that top 15 like Bryce Mitchell, Dan Ige, still very good guys. And yeah, the winner of this deserves a shot at that. I think it would be Felipe Lima, but Joe Anderson Brito is very dangerous and skilled as well. Then let's move on to another really good prospect. This guy not quite as young. I believe he's 29, but still. Mateusz Rebecki. I gave his last fight against Uruguay my 2024 fight of the year, and although there were moments he was getting rocked, he was getting beaten up, I also think Uruguay is an amazing prospect. He's going to be on this list as well, but Mateusz Rebecki clearly won that fight, in my opinion, even though it was close and it was a great fight. And Rebecki is just, he's dangerous because not only is he skilled, he's also extremely tough, extremely powerful, really good cardio, and he's well rounded. This is a guy that maybe he's not like that elite level skill like an Islam Makhachev or even like an Arman Sarukian or Charles Oliveira, but he's extremely well rounded and he's extremely dangerous, which is so important in MMA, having the ability to finish a fight on the feet, on the ground. There's just that makes up for skill gaps sometimes, and he's still a highly skilled guy, super athletic, explosive, built like a brick. So, who I want to give Mateusz Rebecki, I want to give him a jump up, give him Benoit Saint Denis, who is on a bit of a downfall lately. 2 losses against good competition, Poirier and Renato Moicano, but there's no way we can give this guy another fight up the rankings. You're going to have to pay your dues, Benoit Saint Denis, and fight Mateusz Rebecki. These guys actually have pretty similar builds, pretty similar fight styles. I think Mateusz Rebecki is a little more cautious, But as we saw in his last fight, obviously against Orelbai, this is a guy that will scrap with you. He will get on in a war. He will be scrambling on the ground. He will be just throwing on the feet, which is very similar to Benoit Saint Denis. I think this is an amazing fight. Two guys about the same age, similarly skilled, in my opinion. I think the winner of this fight gains a lot of respect. I think Benoit Saint Denis could win this fight, and if he does, I think that he would gain a lot of his hype back, right? Still having fun fights. Mateusz Rebecki has a fun fight with Benoit Saint Denis, wins. He's going to be a top prospect. Everybody's watching out for him. Probably get like a top 10 guy after that. So I think regardless, the outcome of this fight is going to be either a brutal finish or a scrap or both. Regardless, we're going to get a good prospect coming out of it. So I think this is a perfect solution for both Benoit and Mateusz Rebecki. Alright, next we got Ludovic Klein, another really good lightweight prospect. He's on like a 4-fight win streak, before that a draw, and before that a few more wins, which is extremely impressive in the UFC lightweight division. I think this guy deserves a big jump up against another guy that needs to defend his spot in the rankings. That's going to be Michael Chandler, right? I know it seems a little weird to give Chandler a guy that's relatively unknown, like Ludovic Klein. People who know Michael Chandler probably won't know Klein, right? They think of him as the guy that's supposed to fight Conor McGregor, the guy that fights Poirier, Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira. But come on, man, this guy, all he does is lose, really, Michael Chandler. He does not deserve another highly ranked opponent. I don't think he even deserves a ranked opponent. We're going to give Ludovic Klein his chance. He's looked really good, well-rounded in his last few fights. The striking is really clean and crisp. This is another guy at lightweight who's not like especially skilled in one area, but he is extremely well-rounded, right? He's not the most dangerous guy, but he can finish you. He's a good kickboxer. He has a little bit of power. Well-rounded, really, really impressive takedown defense, in my opinion. I forget which fight it was, but in one of his last couple fights, his takedown defense looked really good. Like especially on the single legs, I think it was. He was able to defend those all pretty easily, and then even punish that with some striking combos. So we're going to give Ludovic Klein his chance up the rankings, and we're going to force Chandler to defend when he hasn't really had to do that at all. So should be another extremely fun fight. Both of these guys will scrap. Both of these guys are technical on the feet, but they're willing to get into it. So another fun fight, another good chance for a guy to get up the rankings. And yeah. Alright, next we got Michael Morales, guy that's kind of overlooked sometimes, which is crazy because he's 25 years old, 17-0, undefeated guy, with an extremely fun, dangerous striking style. I'm surprised the UFC doesn't promote him more. He's kind of like the another Carlos Prates, which is funny because he finished Magny before Prates finished Magny, but for whatever reason, the Prates one was way more hyped up. I mean, it was a main event and all that, but still, I think they're both really good. I think Michael Morales, he's younger. Michael Morales is only 25, 17-0, already in the rankings, which is ridiculous that we don't hear more about this guy. I think his striking is elite. It's technical, powerful. We haven't seen him tested all that much in the wrestling and grappling, which is why I want to give him somebody that is going to keep it striking more, because in welterweight we don't really have all that many wrestlers. Aside from at the very top, you got Shavkat, you got Bilal, you got Sean Brady, who are really good wrestlers and grapplers, but I don't think there's any need to give him that right now, because we have seen that at welterweight, strikers are able to get to the top. So let's give Michael Morales Jeff Neal. Jeff hands of steel Neal. I think this is a guaranteed banger, fun fight. Jeff Neal does have that ability to be a bit of a fraud checker, right? We know his level. We know the guys that beat him, guys like Shavkat. We know the guys that lose to him. And I just see this fight as a way to really test what level Michael Morales' striking is, his overall MMA is. Will we see him shoot a takedown if things get messy for him? I think this is the fight that's really going to prove exactly what his level is at. And it's also a good fight for Jeff Neal. He won his last fight in a super weird way. he was definitely winning that fight, but then Rafael dos Anjos kind of injured himself. But Jeff Neal was clearly on his way to a knockout win. I think this is a good spotlight for both of these guys. If Jeff Neal wins this, he gets a lot of respect from the fans. He probably gets a shot up the rankings. If Michael Morales wins this, he's tie him on a rocket and send him to the top of the rankings. We're gonna give him probably like a Ian Gary after that if he wins. So yeah, this would be a super fun one, and I'm not sure who I would choose here. I'd have to go back and watch some more Michael Morales. Honestly, it's hard to go against a guy that's 17-0, 25 undefeated, probably improving every single day. But Jeff Neal is that kind of vet at this point. He has proven to be at the very top of the UFC welterweight striking. So yeah. All right, and next up we got another welterweight guy, Oban Elliot, another really young guy, only 27 years old. He's now on 3 wins in the UFC with 0 losses, and coming off his most impressive performance of his career, probably a good knockout of Basel Hafez in the first round, I believe. Um, yeah, I didn't believe that Oban Elliot had that type of power before that fight, right? We saw Jack Della Maddalena struggle with Basel Hafez. Obviously, Basel Hafez looked different in his fight against Oban Elliot. A lot of people talking about steroids and stuff, which, yeah, I buy into that. Not for Oban Elliot, but Basel Hafez was on it and is now off it, likely. But still, nevertheless, impressive win for Oban Elliot against a competent guy in the striking, a guy that can wrestle and grapple. He looked good in that fight. He looked powerful and dangerous, which is super important in this division. We just talked about Michael Morales and how he is dangerous, how other guys, Carlos Prates, Shavkat, even Ian Gary, are all dangerous in this division. So I think Oban Elliot deserves a jump up to a guy just outside the rankings who also deserves a good fight, and that is going to be Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. If you beat Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, you are a ranked level guy, right? He's kind of a gatekeeper type of guy right outside the rankings. Super tough. He's getting older at this point, but also powerful, dangerous. He's not really known to be getting the most TKOs, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, but he did Benoit Saint Denis bad. He can do that to guys, right? He's very competent as a striker. He puts a lot of volume on you, and it's thudding, sort of powerful volume. If you're just not, if you're not built strongly, right? If you're not a very competent fighter, Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos is gonna mess you up. I think this is a great test for another welterweight prospect in Oban Elliot to see just what his level is. If he goes in there, he beats Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, no problem. Yeah, leap him up the rankings. And then next, we've got the middleweight Joe Pyfer. At one point, this guy was one of the most promoted fighters in the UFC. We had Dana White saying he broke the Ngannou's punching record, which is kind of silly looking back, but he's obviously a super powerful guy. Bounced back from that loss to Hermanson, which was a bad loss to be fair, but he bounced back from that with a TKO over Marc-Andre Barriault. That's a good sign. So we're going to give him one of Barriault's last opponents. We're going to give him Chris Curtis, um, similar to the last one, a guy right outside the rankings, right? A guy, if you beat Chris Curtis, you're going to get a ranked fight, especially if you beat him impressively. If you knock him out, the hype is back on. 2 knockouts in a row against good competition. Chris Curtis is a guy that's going to stand and strike with him, but he is also a guy that's going to test him in the wrestling if things get tricky for him, which is good. We need these tests, especially at middleweight, when we know these guys aren't typically the most skilled, well-rounded guys. You know, middleweights tend to be a little fluky sometimes, which, I mean, our champion is Dricus du Plessis, who's, I mean, obviously a great fighter, but still looks like he lacks some skills sometimes. So, guys like that can succeed at middleweight. And that's not to say Dricus really lacks skills. Sometimes he just looks like he does, but he's actually really good. Joe Pyfer, I'm not saying he's as good as Dricus du Plessis, but he's obviously a good, powerful striker. The finishing potential goes a long way, especially at middleweight. So yeah, I think this is a great fight. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot on the feet. but there is also that element of wrestling. I know Chris Curtis works that a lot with guys like Sean Strickland in the gym, or at least he used to. But this is what I want to see for Joe Pyfer. One more test to prove that he's really legit, that Jack Hermanson thing was kind of a fluke or something that he learned from. And yeah, let's move on to the last one. Like I said, Mikdebek Oralby also on this list. We know he took that loss to Rebecki and obviously took a lot of damage in that fight, but he survived it. Um, it looks like he's going to still have a good chin. He's still going to be super tough. And we saw in that fight that he's still dangerous, right? Even when he was getting beaten up, rocked, he was still landing strikes that was rocking Rebecki too. Um, he can be taken down, he can be out-grappled, but he can also fight out of those positions. He can also land takedowns of his own. He's still pretty young, I think like 28, 29. So he's still a really good prospect in this division, Mikdebek Oralby is. And let's give him somebody that is going to get him closer to those rankings, and that is Drakkar Klose. Now, we just saw Drakkar Klose lose, but Oralby lost also not all that long ago, just a month, 2 or 3 months, and he took a lot of damage into his fight. I think these guys are going to be on the same sort of return schedule. Um, I think both of these guys can make a return in like 5, 6 months, and these guys would have another fun fight. Drakkar Klose is not on the level of like Analizios Zaleski dos Santos, in my opinion. He's not really on the level of a Chris Curtis, but he is one of the better fighters outside of the lightweight rankings. I think a win over Drakkar Klose gets you a fight with one of those top guys outside the rankings and then a ranking shot, which I think is right for Mikdebek Oralby. He is coming off a loss, but he has proven that he is good quality. He's a fun fighter, and I think this would just be an overall fun fight. I think it would do a lot for Oralby going forward, get him back on track, and also gives Drakkar Klose another chance. And this is a guy who deserves another chance. He's pretty good. So, yeah, that'll wrap up the video today. Let me know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, any videos you want to see in the future. I'm always happy to engage with you guys. So, have a great day.